The Way Home, written by Getashia. Chapter 1, Blood and Mud. It was a pretty boring spring afternoon, and I was looking for something to get into. The town I live in is pretty small. Most of the locals skip town during this part of the year, but my parents weren't among them. Luckily for me, my best friend Glenn's parents were the same, so we would typically hang out and get into trouble. Nothing too bad, but we had our moments. One of the things we had in common was the fact we both came from abusive homes. His mother was a drug addict, and his father was a mean-spirited bastard. On the other hand, my parents are drunks and spent the majority of their time arguing. Over the years, we had found places to be free. Most of them had either been torn down or were now used by any number of the other kids Glenn and I didn't get along with. Eventually, we stumbled upon an old 2-story house that sat near the edge of the woods. There was no ominous backstory to the place. We found out later it belonged to some old guy that passed away. His kids refused to sell the land and just left it to rot. Since it was made out of brick, the house held up pretty well over the years. A storm collapsed a section of the roof, blocking off most of the second floor, but other than that, we loved it there. Glenn and I would spend weekends getting high and goofing off, but every once in a while when things got really bad, we'd stay there for days on time. It was our fortress of solitude. It stayed that way for years until Ben Taylor found the place. Ben came from a wealthy family. He wasn't like the other rich kids for the most part. He was a good guy. His situation was a lot like ours. His parents were horrible people, and he wanted out. The difference was, he would buy large amounts of drugs, mostly pills and weed. It was great at first. Then he started selling. From there, things went downhill and we stopped going out there. It wasn't long before he had gotten arrested, and once again, the place was ours. When I got the news, Glenn was stuck at home. He'd burned down one of his neighbor's tool shed, and his folks weren't letting him out. In order to keep the house a secret, we never gave it a name. Instead, if I was planning on going there, I'd tell Glenn I was going to hang out and play video games. So when I called and said those words, I could hear the excitement in his voice as he said,
"Fuck yeah, I'll meet you there,"
before hanging up the phone. He was sitting out front drinking a beer when I walked up. Tossing me one, he laughed and took a sip.
Hey, about time. And hope you brought a lighter. I lost mine around here somewhere.
Cracking open my warm beer, I took a gulp and laughed. I bet you did. How'd you manage to burn down the Murphy's tool shed? Glenn gave me a disgruntled look and sucked his teeth.
Listen, man, it was an accident. And you know what? Since we're on the topic, it was your fault. You gave me bad information. Not only did it not work, but I got throat punched, which is how I knocked over the lamp and started the fire, alright? Jeez.
I had to laugh. He wasn't wrong. Truth is, I knew he'd been eyeballing Murphy's daughter Alice. I told him I'd heard a few things about her and may have led him to believe she'd perform a few unbelievable acts if he smoked with her. In my defense, I didn't think he'd go through with it, but he did. And she didn't, and I couldn't stop laughing about it. We joked around and talked for a while before setting our sights on the house. Somewhere inside was Ben's stash, and we planned on finding it. Splitting up, the search didn't take long. I was in the den when I heard Glenn call out,
"Vic, come here."
Rushing to the hall, I spot him halfway up the stairs trying to pull his leg out of a broken step. I laughed a little and he called out again,
"Vic, man, just come here and help me out, okay?"
Of course I took my time, but I got him out, and that's when we found it. There in the hollowed out space under the step was a gray bag containing 2 lockboxes. I felt like a kid on Christmas. Judging by the look on Glenn's face, he was in the same boat. It took a while to get them to open. We wound up using a rock to smash the locks. Inside the first one there was baggies of weed, meth, coke, and pills along with $200 in ones and fives. In the second box was a pistol, a small notebook, and 6 glass vials of brown liquid. Glenn grabbed the gun and started playing around with it while I thumbed through the notebook. It was filled with names and dates along with what I guessed were the amounts each person was getting. There were a lot of familiar names listed, and I kind of laughed, thinking about more than a few of them getting high. Once the buzz of our discovery wore off, we started making plans. At the time, neither of us had thought much about leaving home, so our plan was to party with the drugs and maybe sell the gun later on. The problem was, sooner or later, Ben or one of his people would come back looking for the stash. That meant we could not come back to the house, and we would have to make sure nobody knew we had it. Time was running out. The sun was setting, and the woods would be dark soon. Since neither of us came prepared to camp out, we decided I would take the stash home with me, and we would figure it out the next day. I couldn't stop thinking about all the fun we was going to have as I strode home. Along the way, I stopped to grab a soda from the gas station. I was standing out front and drinking it when Sheriff Grant pulled into the lot. He and my father had gone to school together and had more than one run-in due to my old man's drunk temper. He gave me a nod as he stepped out of his patrol car and walked over. In the moment, I'd forgotten about the bag of felonies strapped to my back. The sheriff looked me over and shook his head before adjusting his belt and looking around. "Aren't you the Wells boy? What was your name?" "Victor. Victor, isn't it?" I nodded, and he smirked. "I thought it was you. Don't you and your folks stay on the south end of town? What are you doing this far out?" I wanted to tell him it was none of his fucking business, but considering the situation, I told him I'd been out visiting a friend and was trying to get home before dark. He patted me on the shoulder and told me I better get moving, then went in the store. He didn't have to say it twice. I wanted to get as far away from him as I could without making a scene. The rest of the walk was uneventful, but when I got home I could see it was going to be a bad night. As usual, my parents were drunk, arguing over something that had come in the mail. I didn't care. I learned a long time ago to stay out of the way when they got like this. I went to my room and spent most of the night with my headphones on, trying to ignore the occasional thud of one of them slamming into a wall. By the time it was all said and done, the police were called by one of the neighbors, and my dad was hauled off to spend the night in a drunk tank. Watching the car drive away, it hit me. I had to get away from there before I ended up just like them. I thought about it long and hard about where I'd go and how I would get there. In the end, anywhere was better than there, so I decided to sell my share of the drugs and skip town. The next day, when I told Glenn about what I planned, he was instantly in. Deep down, I knew he'd react that way. If I'm being honest, I planned on it. We threw the idea of staying under the radar out the window. The plan was to sell it all and be long gone before Ben or anyone else knew it. For the most part, things moved quickly. Before either of us knew it, we were down to the last of the meth and those vials. We had more than enough cash to hit the road. There was no reason to stay. I met up with Glenn at the park between there and school is, where we sold the most. He was sitting on a bench holding up one of those vials to the sun when I got there.
"What do you think this shit is?"
he asked as he finally popped the lid off before bringing it up to his nose to smell it. Shrugging, I responded, "Who knows? Nobody asked for it." I was thinking of throwing it away. Holding onto it isn't doing us much good. When Glenn didn't respond, I turned to see him sitting there with his eyes rolled back in their socket. For a second, I thought it was a prank till he stood up and started staring at the sky. "Glenn! Hey, stop fucking around. What's wrong with you?" He still didn't answer. Instead, he started walking away, holding out his arms as if he were trying to catch something falling towards him. I watched him tracking whatever it was with his eyes as he scrambled around trying to get to the right position. He kept it up for a few seconds, then I guess whatever it was hit the ground because he stared blankly at the dirt for a moment before vomiting and running away. He didn't run far before he dropped. When I caught up to him, he sat there and wiped his mouth and smiled.
Holy shit! What just happened? Where'd they go?
Getting up, he dusted himself off and started looking around.
Where'd they go? Didn't you see them? And they were literally everywhere, falling from the sky. When they're right there, you had to have seen them. Tell me you saw them.
I guess the reality of it hit him. He smiled, then rushed back to the bench to scoop the ball.
But that doesn't matter. This shit is amazing. Dude, I feel great. You gotta hit it. Come on.
Nah, I'm good. That's all you, bro. Look, we've got enough cash. Let's hit the road. Ben's bound to pop up any day now, and I like to be gone when that happens. After a brief discussion, it was agreed, but Glenn wanted to stop by his house before we left. He said it was to pick up a few things. When we got there, I waited outside while he ran in. It was supposed to be a quick stop, but it didn't work out that way. After about 20 minutes, the door flew open and he came running out with his parents right behind him. His mother was yelling, telling him he couldn't leave while his father hawked him down, tackling him before he could get out of the yard. I rushed in to help and got punched in the face, causing blood to gush from my nose as all hell broke loose. The chaos only lasted a moment. It was cut short by a gunshot, followed by Glenn's father flopping around on the ground screaming. I staggered back now, focusing all my attention on Glenn, who was standing there still, aiming the gun at his father. His mother yelled, "What did you do?" as she rushed to her husband's aid. I was frozen. I couldn't process what was happening. My ears were ringing and my heart felt like it would explode out of my chest. I watched in complete disbelief as my best friend took aim at his mother with tears streaming down his eyes.
What about me?
He screamed just before pulling the trigger, and just like that, it was over. Glenn stood there staring at his parents' bodies as he slipped off his backpack and tossed it to me.
You should get out of here before the cops show up. Good luck, bro. I'll see you when I see you.
With that, he dug into his pocket and pulled out the vial. Opening it, without taking his gaze away from the bodies, he breathed it in until his eyes rolled over and dropped it, staggered away, as the sounds of sirens somewhere in the distance brought me back to reality. I did the only thing I could. I grabbed the bag and I ran. I ran till my muscles burned and my heart ached. The sirens were close now. They were probably already at Glenn's place. As that crossed my mind, gunshots echoed through the air and I stopped. Flashbacks of the good times raced through my mind, and somehow I just knew my best friend, my brother, was gone.